Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the first Pareto sales webinar, From Sharp Practices to Sharp Talent. Where is the future of sales? I'm John Holton, Client Services Director for the Assessment and Accreditation Division of Pareto, known as Accolade. And our guest today is Head of Sales at the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management, Ben Turner. Today's webinar will be for approximately 40 minutes, covering important aspects of the changing world of sales. As we go through the sessions, feel free to send in questions, and we'll take those at the end. Okay, so let's start looking at the sales profession as it is here and now. Why do we need to change? Well, there's a continuing need for us all to drive positive perception of our chosen profession, because recent research reveals some interesting themes. And as you can see, not all are as positive as we would like. The commercial world now demands value, ease and speed, and buyers want better solutions quicker and simpler. We work in a changing world. Selling organizations need to adapt to the evolving world of buyers. Buyers who use technology to research and measure suppliers, who use technology to gain insight into market pricing and to purchase, procure and communicate. Buyers who rely on technology to drive efficiencies in their businesses. And we, as sellers, need to connect with all these aspects when proving our business value. The Internet continues to play an important role for our industry, offering buyers and prospects a greater insight into areas of sales once inaccessible to them, like our sales methodologies, our organizational value, our differentiators, and even profiles of our sales teams. There's more prevalence in forums, news, and social media, which also means that salespeople have more information than ever before, which is great news for us. And in these pressing economic times, clients are rightly seeking a sustainable approach to survival and growth. Those sellers that can't prove ROI will no longer be listened to. The purchase has got to add value through efficiency, saving, or profits. We've got to resist the sales imbalance, which is too much short-term focus. The industry needs to balance immediate wins, targets and transactional selling with longer-term profitable relationships. Sales is about tomorrow as well as today, so we must avoid that transactional mindset that reduces the sale to a commodity purchase. The winners in the market make sales today with a keen, trained eye on the client's longer-term needs. And they do that through exercising their consultative business skills to reveal a client's strategic needs for the medium to longer term, as well as showing how their offer becomes an integral part in the client's strategy. Whilst there are healthy signs that the sales industry is moving in the right direction, and Ben will touch on that later, there are still hurdles for us to overcome. You may have heard of the equation, performance equals potential minus interference. Again, that's performance equals potential minus interference. Interference for the industry comes in various forms. These include the lack of investment. If the reason for being in business is to generate profit for the greater good, then investing in the people that lead the creation of revenue and profit is no longer a nice to have, it's an absolute necessity. And this investment can be in the form of resource, of support, time, education, tools, and obviously training. So, we're talking about investment, but let's change your thinking slightly. Picture this, your shiny, executive, leather interior car on your driveway. Yep, the one you rely on every day, and the one you ensure is properly serviced and cared for throughout the year to ensure it continues to deliver. Compare that to your sales force. Compare that to your sales leaders. Do you invest in assessing their needs in an ever-changing market? Do they take knocks? Does their efficiency drop if they're not invested in? Well, maybe that 6-monthly assessment is well overdue. And as we mentioned earlier, the reputation and professional standing will always need to be at the forefront of the selling organization's mind. And the good news is, it's easy. Simply put your clients in the center of what you do for a living. So, Where do we want to go? Obviously, towards sharp talent and sharp professionals. For consistent, predictable, longer-term profits, the salesperson naturally would want to move up the relationship ladder to business partner, working with the client across a strong stakeholder network, developing a mutual strategy, resulting in big-ticket results. Here, the seller acts as challenger, support, and checker, in effect, an external specialist adding inside value. But a word of warning, your sales strategy and offer may require a mix of all four levels, aligned to the potential of your relationship with your clients and your value proposition. Whilst price sensitivity and competition decrease as you climb upwards, and conversely your importance increases as you climb, let's just repeat that. Price sensitivity and competition decrease as you climb upwards, and conversely your importance increases as you climb. Only those with the high degrees of sales and relationship competence and business acumen will get to the top and, more importantly, stay there. Be prepared for the expense in terms of time and energy, as the client expectation is at its peak when you operate at the level. Hence the need for assessment and training to ensure your team is suitably equipped to take the riches and manage the risks. It's all about being fit for the future, ensuring that your salespeople understand your buyers and your buyers' buyers, are profit and relationship driven, are connected online and offline, that they command attention and interest in their field of expertise, positively challenging their clients, that they move from skills to competence, that's the application of skills to a recognized level, that they are innovative and creative in developing tailored package solutions. So, if we know that our sellers and sales leaders are fit for the future, we've also got to provide the right environment and climate for them to flourish and to attract new people to the sales career. So, how do we attract and develop talent in the industry? Well, by encouraging and rewarding new entrants into the industry, raising the awareness of the vital role sellers play in the UK economy. Again, an aspect that Ben will touch on shortly. By reinforcing the importance of professional qualifications and CPD, just like our counterpart professions, by paying significant rewards for significant effects on client results as well as our own, and becoming the thought leaders in UK business. And you might be thinking, what's the role of your business in all this? Well, you've got a responsibility to assess sellers and their leaders to ensure the business understands where they lie in terms of competence, and from that provide the right inputs to drive the right outputs. You have a responsibility to invest in the training of the sales force, to develop talent and enhance their professional impact, and a responsibility to audit and measure progress along the way. And why do you need to do it? Well, standing still nowadays creates a reverse direction. Another reason why you need to do it: your business health will improve, your results, focus, predictability, a reasonably new factor yet critical aspect, agility and ROI through better, quicker, simpler philosophy of sales. So let's see how one business approached the future. This was their situation. In terms of where they were investing, they were spending on today's needs and ignoring longer term. They were not calculating or measuring ROI. They weren't comparing outputs to inputs, and therefore had no strategic intent regarding sales. So you can see from the chart that people investment was small. Business growth was limited and the opportunities were missed. Opportunities to sell more were missed. The factors that influenced their results were assessed, and it showed that the salespeople were the single most important asset, which unfortunately had inadvertently received the lowest investment. So the business decided to make changes and move from a business that misaligned its investment to achieve its goals to a transformed business, focusing on leveraging its best asset. And here's how they started. They sought advice and support in auditing their sales function and salespeople to standards of excellence. This revealed gaps and areas for improvement and reinforcement, as well as hidden best practices, which was shared for the first time across the business. The team was assessed live in simulated client situations. And this led to a package of sales and leadership training programs with workplace transfer sessions. That's workplace transfer sessions to ensure all those involved attained the necessary levels of competence to move positive change back into the business. The development solutions were created with direct links to key business success factors, including the need to identify and retain talent, to generate sales force loyalty and pride, to increase profit per sale, and to ease the way to sell. That meant total focus on developing potential and removing interference, creating absolute alignment of sales role competencies to the ultimate business mission. To strengthen their market standings, support their professional values, and maximize their people's talent along the way, they accredited ability and performance of their sellers against defined standards. This underpinned the creation of a high-performance culture and a new dynamic drive in profit and efficiency, with the ISMM standards being an integral part of that transformation. So, in summary, they took a structured approach to auditing, assessing, then training and accrediting their salespeople, and aligned every aspect to their mission and reason for being in business. So what were the results? A significant hike in sales performance, greater profits, talent retention, and a structure for succession planning for the future. They are now fit for the future, an appropriate point to seek the views of Ben at the ISMM. Welcome, Ben, and thanks for joining us.
How are you doing, John? Nice to speak to you.
I'm very well, and thanks for your time. And my first question to you, Ben, is what are your thoughts on the current state of sales and the selling profession?
Unfortunately, it's disappointing that the current state of sales, and especially in the UK, is not great. We still suffer from a poor perception amongst our peers and amongst the public. You know, we don't have to go too far from turning on a TV or reading a news article to understand the perception of what sales and selling looks like to the UK public. I would sort of cover that a little bit in that if you look at some of the best businesses, some of the top high-performing organisations, and I don't mean just big business, I mean just well-run business, the ones that really invest with their sales teams are the ones that will always sit at the top. Unfortunately, we're talking about a small percentage there, and unfortunately the poor practices of many organisations affect everyone involved with the profession.
Okay. So why do you feel that happened, Ben?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to try and answer, and one of the things that actually you highlighted in your presentation was around this short-term view, and certainly taking a short-term transactional view of selling is something that's going to lead to short and sharp practices. I also feel that as a body we don't have a great resource that says this is what good looks like, and a real combined opinion on how to follow that strategic approach, which means what we've got a scenario is people that have had poor sales best practice for many, many years becoming sales managers, then imparting that poor practice to their colleagues, and it's almost like a drop-down pyramid effect of poor practice throughout the industry.
Right, so that kind of historic poor practice has cascaded its way through. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what are your views then in terms of the major advancements in the sales industry over the last few years, Ben?
Yeah, and certainly, particularly not even over the last few years, but over a long amount of time, but literally in the last 12 to 24 months, one of the words we're using more and more is the word professionalisation. And I think professionalisation is where hopefully many people that you guys interact with, that we interact with as well, is really going to bring it forward, that the understanding that salespeople are more than just the guy that talks a bit too much and therefore this is the job that we should give them, but actually have a more career-focused way of becoming a sales professional. So this professionalisation has been a massive, massive change, and something that I think we're seeing a lot of buy-in on the back of that. those who have, and you mentioned as well, high standards, qualifications. I think there's been a real significant change over literally the last 12 to 24 months.
Terrific. Good news. Okay, and I think you're going to like me asking you this question, Ben. How can the ISM help businesses in becoming fit for the future and sharpening their talent? So what help can businesses get from the ISMM in terms of being fit for the future and sharpening their talent?
Well, clearly I don't want to take this opportunity as being a complete sales pitch, John, but obviously one of the things that we do represent is that professionalisation. We've got some really nice figures around, and I'm sure we'd hope to sort of disseminate this information to those on the webinar around the importance and the performance improvement that occurs when the sales team are genuinely valued within that business. There's a real gap between those who are at the high end of sales performance and those that are just very good at sales performance, and that recognition of the sales professional within their business is a key driver. So yes, of course, the ISMM represents that, and of course we'll go on to talk a lot about the qualifications and things along those lines that will really help to rubber stamp that that change in mindset of a business that they want well-trained, well-invested in professional salespeople.
Good pitch, Ben. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. I'd just like to say to the audience, don't forget to ask your questions using the chat box on the system, and we'll take those questions right at the end. So that leads us nicely onto Ben's section. So what's on the agenda for the next section, Ben?
Well, and I'm just going to look to go through, and what we can do is I'll just show people the executive summary that hopefully we'll be going, or I'll be going through over the next 10 minutes, and hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the sort of agenda that we're looking at. I think we need to understand what the shape of sales looks like in the UK at the moment, and hopefully we can give some insight around what that looks like against the rest of the world. We'll look at the move towards professionalisation. The ISMM has also done a lot of work, hopefully on everyone's behalf, in terms of the recognition of sales in the form of government lobbying, and hopefully we'll have time just towards the end to give a bit of insight around some of the worldwide case studies that we've been working on. So moving on, if I can. If we look at what the current landscape looks like, and excuse me for those watching, but hopefully the few sentences and words that are coming up here, when we worked with a business called DDI who did a big worldwide piece of research about the view of sales across the world, these are the sort of anecdotal comments that people were making, and hopefully they look quite familiar. And I don't mean that as in hopefully that's what the sort of thing that goes on in your business, but certainly I think people will sympathise with that kind of reaction that people have to a sales process. As I said, often we find that the problems that exist within sales aren't for the 10, 15, even 20% of business with fantastic sales practices. It's actually the practices of the 80% that don't have good practices that actually affect everyone. So here's a few sort of ideas of what those buyers and people were saying to the research. If we can just move on. So here's the first example of some of the feedback that the report produced, and this particular slide is going through what buyers were saying, whether buyers would be proud to call themselves salespeople. I think this is a really important slide. What are the people that we're sitting across the desk from on a day-to-day basis saying about our profession? And it's pretty frightening. I think the only comfort in this slide is that at least we're not the only ones that are suffering here, that across the US, across the rest of Europe and into Australia, the salesperson is still not viewed as a genuine profession. And therefore buyers were saying that actually a lot of them would not be proud to call themselves a salesperson. Moving on, we can look at this slide in two ways. First of all, we could say that actually the overall perception of sales is that 53% are good, but perhaps we should be more concerned that only 6% view that the perception of sales as an industry, as a profession, as excellent. and that there's too much of it falling into the poor and fair. And let's be blunt, are we looking on a day-to-day basis that our salespeople are trying to achieve good or excellent? And then perhaps the final one is having to understand whether the expertise within sales has actually increased. And again, there are some green shoots that over the last 5 years, a lot of buyers are saying, look, the expertise is increasing. But I'd still challenge this and say, is enough being done? And therefore, I think there's still plenty of work, I'm sure that most people on the call would agree, that needs to be done here. So perhaps the most important slide here is how do we solve it? How do we go from where we are at the moment to where we need to be? And I've talked quite a lot already about the professionalization of sales and how that impacts on the performance of a business. So as we move forward, there's also a lot of work that can be done in terms of research. And the ISA memo at the moment, we're talking with government to try and make the UK the centre of the world in terms of sales best practice. We think that there's a considerable investment that would need to be made in a research body that would understand what the best will look like. We already have a similar document to this, which is the National Occupational Standards for Sales, but we feel that we need to build and build and build on this in the same way as perhaps those who understand the marketing function did maybe 20, 30 years ago that bore the rise of people like Kotler or Maslow. Therefore, the research body would be a fantastic thing to have and would be a great benchmark for UK as the world leaders in sales. We've engaged with the support of the Shadow Chancellor for Small Businesses, a MP named Toby Perkins, who's really driving the case forward at the moment. And we really urge you to try and interact with the debates that will be going on over the next maybe 6 to 9 months. And for once, we've actually got some political will to recognise sales and the importance of sales professionals within the UK. As we move forward, of course, what we hope that will pass down would be an influence on the qualification, and therefore a qualified sales force again would be massive important to us. If we look at it in very real terms, whether those who would see a doctor would actually want to see one who wasn't qualified, or certainly get on a plane for a pilot that wasn't qualified, I think the importance of sales is the same within business. And we can relate it to the business as well, in terms of whether we'd want people preparing our accounts that weren't ACCA registered, or a lawyer that wasn't part of the bar. Therefore, the importance of sales in the performance of the business is so important, and therefore to have qualified sales force, we believe is a massively important step to improve this sort of performance. What we think that will be born out of that is real learning, knowledge-driven sales organisations, and we are now already seeing, with the help of partners like Pareto Law, the birth of the Sales Academy. So what is a Sales Academy? And clearly that's a question for John as well, but what we see that as is a process where the employees go through sales training that achieves sales qualifications. There's a real upskilling involved with the sales qualification as well, and the Sales Academy, because many people go through different methodologies, different techniques, and the different ways that that individual business may conduct the way it sells. What we like to see the Academy approaches doing is making the salesperson accountable for the way they sell, by them looking at different methodologies, by them understanding, evaluating, and applying them to their business, so therefore they have the best technique or methodology that works for them within their business. Therefore, the academic approach really allows the salesperson themselves to be more responsible and have a better understanding of how they can improve their own performance. We think this is a massive change in the way that people are actually going about it. In the past, I've spoken about this importance. Perhaps I feel as important as maybe spin selling was back in the 80s. I think the idea of having professionally qualified salespeople is probably the biggest step that we've made as a profession for maybe 30 or 40 years. So, as we move forward, and I'm looking to do that, the shift that's happened, and apologies there, that we've seen happen has been one whereby the amount of salespeople taking qualifications and moving into this kind of environment has gone from maybe a couple of hundred to some real thought leaders in the industry to maybe thousands. What we're now looking at is some of the largest employers in the country asking their salespeople to go through proper sales qualifications. It's worked fantastically, especially for those that have maybe accountants or other similar types of qualifications within their business. What this transfers over to is worldwide programs. And we're now delivering ISMM qualifications with partners into the Middle East, into Eastern Europe, and now into Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. What this means is that there's a really holistic and academic approach to sales learning throughout these businesses, but still allowing those organisations to put their own stamp on things. So there's a few testimonials and a few examples of what we've done in this slide, where we can see the sort of work we've done with great partners like SIG, and I'm sure we'll make these available to people afterwards, as well as BT Global, where we had some really significant change in the way that we were able to tailor and make sure that those sales professionals had a real presence within that business and how they were engaged with performance improvement, as well as with a business like Tata Steel with a whole different type of problem. We can of course make these available to people after the event or when they go back and look at the recording of the webinar. So I think for me, they are the main points. Hopefully we've been able to look a little bit about what's happening in terms of government lobbying, in terms of research, and hopefully begin to introduce people to the idea of an academic approach to sales learning. It's never been so important and it's never been so big at the moment. So hopefully that's of value to those that have looked at the webinar. John, hopefully that's given you a bit of insight, and I'll pass back to you if that's okay.
Yeah, great, Ben. Thank you very much as ever, and thank you, as you say, for that insight. Invaluable. So we're now in the webinar. We're going to look at some of the questions that have been submitted live, and I'll take some. And Ben, if you can add, that would be terrific. So the first question comes from. Thank you. The first question comes from Jim. Jim asks, when you say some of the key competencies for sellers to be fit for the future. So again, Jim asks, what would you say are some of the key competencies for sellers to be fit for the future? Well, I'll take this, Ben. Please add to it as you see fit. The fit for the future principle is about obviously making sure that sellers look a bit more strategically and get greater business acumen and greater insight in terms of the needs and the longer-term needs and the strategic needs of their clients. So from my perspective, and what we're seeing with our own clients, is a move from that kind of transactional need focus, today's needs that is, to more longer-term strategic thinking. So for sure, one of the competencies for me would be strategic thinking. Associated with that and underpinning that would be the drive and dynamism, their ability, sellers' ability to consistently commit and derive the degree of effort needed for that strategic thinking. So that strategic thinking, drive and dynamism, and inspirational influence as well, being able to influence different levels of stakeholders into more strategic direction of the business. So inspiring people to change and inspiring people to look at things longer term. So in terms of fit for the future, they're the three aspects for me. Anything to add, Ben, from your experience?
Yeah, for me, I think one of the elements that I always look at, and the more we sort of work with businesses in terms of understanding their training and the way they approach the learning environment, was that one of the really important things was that so many people have been told a one-trick way of selling. And this is the way we do things around here. And one of the things we've really seen people benefit from is saying, well, actually, there's 4 different methodologies. And what we can now do is evaluate them against the way that we sell within our business and work out which one's good for me, which one's good for the business, and try and reach a compromise. Rather than having a one-dimensional view of it, but actually get best practice around. And that's what we're sort of trying to really create, this idea that someone can look at different models, different understanding, and apply them to their business effectively. So we like the idea of salespeople really investing in their own time and in their own way that they sell, and really learning it in terms of performance improvement for themselves.
Terrific. Thanks, Ben. We have a question, next question from Andrew Weisenberg, and Andrew asks, is the perception of people, of salespeople, so I'll give you that again, is the perception of people, of salespeople, not driven by a complete lack of understanding, that ultimately it's viewed as a dark art and people just don't understand it? This includes many people within your own organization, never mind your customers. There is this perception that it's easy and no amount of accreditation will solve this, and we just need to grow a thicker skin. How do you feel about that, Ben? If you'd like to take that, I'm allowed.
I certainly would.
Andrew, thank you.
I certainly would. First of all, yeah, look, the misunderstanding of sales is absolutely the case. I don't think people misunderstand sales within business like they misunderstand anything. The funny thing is about it is everyone's also an expert. So that challenge that Andrew's laid out there is absolutely right. I would question the solution to that. Because one of the things is it's not about just getting a thick skin and bearing with it and dealing with it, but it is to actually educate. One of the things that we've worked with recently is actually introducing sales, and one of the things we saw was that there's a real HR and sales issue, and that HR and sales weren't getting each other. Now, the solution to that isn't to say, actually, let's just leave it as it is. Look, if they don't get us and we don't get them, that's one of those things. But it was actually then that we worked with a lot of HR consultants and L&D consultants on what the salespeople do, actually educated HR and L&D to understand the sales function better, and in short, sell better to them. This internal client or business partner that they had within the business, there was a real obligation for them to understand better. So there is a huge job. I couldn't agree more with the premise of where things are, but in terms of professionalization, that's going to help to gain credit. The reason why sales has a poor perception, because hey, I had to go through 4 years of accountancy school to get my job. You guys turn up, 3 days training on the phone and you're earning commission. So yeah, there's a big issue there that needs to be addressed, and thicker skin I don't think is necessarily the answer to it, I'm afraid.
No, and Andrew's got a very valid point here, and what I'd like to add is that we also have responsibility that when we do a good job and our client appreciates that we're doing a good job, that word is spread, so the education kind of builds momentum, really, and the commercial benefit of what we do for a living is realized. And it's not, we all say it's not an easy thing. Helping clients in different businesses with different challenges requires a massive skill, and therefore that education piece that you referred to, Ben, is a significant piece. And obviously we look to the Institute to support us in all that. So let's move on to the next question. That's terrific. Thank you, Andrew. Next question from Beth Morris, and Beth asks, there seems to be a lot of interference getting in the way of selling. Where do you start in solving it? That's a really good question, Beth. Thank you very much. Well, two aspects from me, really. One is about seller efficiency. Are the sellers spending the right time, right actions with the right clients and the right prospects? Are they prioritizing the tasks in accordance with the kind of urgency factor, the importance factor? And are efforts per prospect based on winnability versus the potential of that opportunity? So that interference, where do you start? Look at seller efficiency as point number one. Point number two is seller competence. Define what it is, what it means to the seller, what it means to the business, what it means to the clients. Measure it and stretch it. I think they're the two aspects I would start on: efficiency and levels of competence. Anything to add, Ben?
I think you've positioned that very well, John. And the only thing I'd add to it was just around general interference. Was one of the things that we see a lot and that frustrates me is this kind of a view that the businesses are trying to do anything they can so they don't actually have to sell. They'll do everything in terms of let's get people online and do online purchases to avoid customer and client interaction. And that sort of interference is something I'm massively against for obvious reasons. So one of the things that I agree with, yeah, absolutely interference there, but that's again down to the responsibility of sales organisations to say, well, actually, here's where we add value to the whole process, and for again demonstrate the importance of having a really effective sales team is fundamental there. But yeah, only that piece on this idea that people are trying to move away and doing their best. Oh, we don't want to have to sell to anyone. Let's try and get them online. Let's try and do anything that we can do. Let's engage social media as long as we don't have to be seen to be selling anything.
Okay, terrific. And we've got a question now from Victoria Waldock. And Victoria asks, good one for you here, Ben. What should we be looking for as recruiters when hiring young people with a lack of any sales experience? What should we be focusing on during interviews? What should we be looking for as recruiters for hiring young people? There's some obvious ones there in terms of drive, enthusiasm, being articulate, being confident, and being able to explain and sell benefits of working with that individual. Any views from your perspective, Ben? When recruiting younger people?
Yeah, the one thing I would say is that I'd be looking for as much of a rounded professional as possible. You know, people who get numbers is just as important as people who can communicate. People who understand the business acumen or things along those that are quite important. Don't make sales be the last option, you know, when someone comes through the door that, you know, well, they're not quite good enough to be an accountant if they don't get this. They've got to be, I think, you know, intelligent salespeople is one of the most important things as any. But I'd also throw it round and I'd say, well, what are you offering as well? And make sure the business, the recruiting business, is creating that decent pathway. Because at the end of the day, whatever you hire in, you have a responsibility for that young individual to create a career for them. So therefore, I'd also turn it round to you personally, or turn round to anyone recruiting to say, okay, who are we now going to? What are we now going to do with this individual when they get into the business? Are we going to create a career for them, or are we going to give them a call target, a revenue target, and a couple of brochures and ask them to get on with it? So there's a few things that I'd be looking at there from both sides of the table.
Yeah, and it's a natural kind of innate ability to want to help people as well. And that sounds a bit cheesy, folks, but it's not meant to be. I know when I started selling many moons ago, I needed and was forced to wear a help hat rather than a sales hat. And my inquisitive nature, my questioning, my listening, my empathy and understanding grew because of that, and that revealed greater needs. So somebody who looks to support people, to support businesses, has got an element of business acumen, has got the drive and dynamism as well as the interpersonal skills. So hopefully that answers your question, Victoria, or certainly helps. Some great questions coming in. I love this one. This is one from Michael Coleman. And Michael asks, tell me about your views of buyer's perception in regards to using the following terms on your business card. Sales executive versus business development executive. What would you recommend? That's from Michael Coleman. Would you like to take that one, Ben, or would you like me to respond? I've got a natural attraction to business development executive. Reason being, I'm starting to read that from the eyes of the client rather from the eyes of the seller, and therefore that kind of suggests, rightly so, mutual benefit. Any views, Ben?
To a certain extent, but I guess mine comes from where I want to be in 20 years' time rather than what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. Look, in the long run, I don't want it to matter. I want people to be able to be proud to put that I'm the sales executive. My job is to sell. And depending on what buyers you are speaking to will also depend on that as well. If I was looking at a purchasing department, actually, you know what? They don't mind. It doesn't matter. They deal with salespeople. They deal with business development managers, key account managers. Everyone's seen all these job titles they are before. Perhaps there might be in a slightly pretentious way I position this, that maybe it might be just as important for the individual carrying the card to realise what their job role is, and by addressing it up into something that it's not could be a bad way. I'm not suggesting that's what you were doing, but certainly if this guy is the salesperson, let's be proud to call ourselves the salesperson. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, and if the purpose is to sell, and the term sales executive supports that, and you're proud of your profession, then why wouldn't you put that on your business card? If your role and responsibility is to develop business for yourselves as well as the client, then why wouldn't you put business development executive on? So I suppose it depends on the nature and the environment in which you work for you to decide that yourselves, really. But be proud of selling.
Absolutely.
And another question now from a lady called Jennifer Lister, and Jennifer asks, do you think the future of sales will have an entry-level qualification for any sales roles? It's a question for Ben. Do you think the future of sales will have an entry-level qualification for any sales roles in the future?
A difficult one to answer, and also, you know, sort of the add-on questions. Do I think that's a good thing? First of all, one of the great things about selling, let's not lose track of it, is that it is a little bit easier to get on into. I don't think it should be completely easy for anyone. I think there still needs to be a quality issue there. But I would like to see an entry-level style qualification, not one people have to go to night schools for the first 3 years of their sales career. They've got targets to hit and a job to do. So, but that's not to say that I don't think that every salesperson should at least understand some basic sales skills, some basic ethical skills, a few ideas that will get them along their way, and the qualification that wraps that up would be a perfect way to recognize that individual's contribution. So do I think it will exist? I think we're on that path. I don't think it will ever exist in as raw form as that, but I think there will be a point whereby a lot of businesses will be asking to at least, or either implement themselves or ask the person to have an empathy or an introduction to understanding what the concept of sales looks like.
Okay, thank you very much. We're getting a lot of questions about the Sales Academy principle. We've got one here from Ross Andrews, and Ross asks, can you elaborate a bit more about the Sales Academy? I'll take this on first, Ben, and if you can add to that, that'd be great.
Please do.
Yeah, the principle Sales Academy, or the term Sales Academy, depends who you're speaking to, really. There seems to be a bit of a grey area in the industry in terms of what this term means. For some clients, it simply means a collection or portfolio of training events that their sales force will be experienced to. For others, it's kind of underpinned by progressive levels of competence that actually link into the succession planning and talent retention strategy of the organization. And it supports the learner in terms of the direction that they can take and the support mechanisms that are in place to get them to the next role or beyond. So the term, I would say, is translated in various ways. From my perspective and Pareto's perspective, it's a robust but flexible program of events that are underpinned by qualifications, if necessary, either in-house or external with ISMM, that lead somewhere, that lead to role and are aligned to the business values and the business intentions, really. So it's not necessarily a physical thing, and we're working with our digital partners to look at virtual sales academies as well to make sure that the resources and steps and paths and competencies and fit for the future principles are right for everybody in the sales force. That's leaders through to new entrants. Anything to add, Ben, on Sales Academies?
Yeah, the one thing I'd say that the real good point you made there was around alignment. And one of the things, you know, in terms of developing a sales academy is, for a good example of best practice, go right back to those job descriptions. Actually look at exactly what it is that the business wants that individual to do, and match that that learning, that training against those job descriptions. It's also an opportunity to engage with HR and work out whether those job descriptions are worth keeping, but certainly it helps to sort of actually say, this is the role that someone needs to do, and this is the program and of events or interventions, that person will go through. The academy approach to me personally as an ISMM is about that academic approach to learning, so understanding that the person, as they go through their career journey, which is another important word, is about understanding different models. And I think I sort of aired on it a little bit, but that idea that this isn't just the way we do things around here, but there's a few different ways that the salesperson themselves can begin to be an environment where they can learn different techniques, different models, different theories, and apply them to make themselves better. I think that academic world, for the first time, and I've said it during the presentation, for 30 or 40 years is one of the most significant changes that I think that's going to occur in sales, is that people are going to look at this academic approach to learning and apply it to a commercial world. And I think that's where things can get pretty exciting.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. The question comes from Anthony Levy. And Anthony asks, in a small business, the time and cost to train sales members is harder to absorb than in larger companies. Any ideas on how a small business can manage the cost and time elements of training sharp practices while still, I don't know if that we're trying to train sharp practices, it's sharp in terms of talent, while still generating business-sustaining sales in a small business. So the issue here is, from Anthony, hopefully I've interpreted this right, Anthony, is that how does a small business spend time and invest in getting its sharp talent for the future, really? And that means there's a really practical business-related question, obviously. And please, from my perspective, please don't see training as formal classroom environments necessarily. Interestingly, this morning I've been at meetings with some of our digital partners to talk about how we share knowledge and how we share best practice and how we share stories across organizations, either simply by pushing information onto mobile devices or using social media in order to share some of the best practices. So it's things like, for me, it's things like shadowing. Please don't overlook the opportunity of shadowing the best performers, and making sure that you choose the right people to shadow, obviously, and learn from their skills. It's about best practice forums. It's about focus groups. It's about story sessions. It's about learning from people, not just formal training. And sharing that kind of knowledge exchange, both internally and externally. And using things like, and Ben will applaud me for this, hopefully, in terms of the networking opportunities that are around. That's client network opportunities, sector opportunities, the ISMM networking opportunities, and learning from your peers across the industry. Anything to add, Ben?
No, not really, John, other than to say I think one of the really nice points you made there was around, shadowing and things along those lines. Finding mentors and people along those lines. There's so many people. I think it's one of the real values and benefits of working with the sales profession is people are so keen to share knowledge and share best practice. So finding mentors for your team or for yourself it can be a really nice way of doing that, and networking with other sales professionals. Of course, yes, ISMM, we do that, and please go and have a look at that. But yeah, we try and create environments where salespeople can, in short, inverted commas, hang out with each other, understand different problems, understand how to solve those different problems. But it's not just ISMM. Shadowing with other peers, colleagues, or even clients, I think it's just good practice, and just makes a big statement about that business and its commitment to its sales team.
Ben, terrific. Guys, we hope you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you very much to Ben. Thank you for your time and insight, and it's been invaluable. Please watch this space for upcoming events and upcoming webinars. We'll be sending you a recording of this webinar very shortly. And enjoy the day. Happy selling. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.